Today's guest on the Winning Teams podcast is Mark Monchek. Now, Mark is the founder and the Chief Opportunity Officer, just to give him his right title, for Opportunity Lab, which is an organization. He explains what it does when we get into the interview. But it really helps organizations to strategize, to identify opportunities, and also to really optimize those opportunities and how to make them happen in a reasonable period of time. He's written a book called The Culture of Opportunity. The subtitle is How to Grow Your Business in an Age of Opportunity, and we delve into that. And I think that there's some fantastic things that he talks about in that book. It's a book I thoroughly enjoyed, and I'd highly recommend. He talks about success DNA, how you can identify it, how you can understand it, and how you can actually really understand how you can bring that to the fore and how you can sustain and bring it forward. But he also talks about being an expert in opportunity and how you develop that culture of opportunity in an organization. So Mark is a really interesting guy. I said I love his book. I love his content. I love the way he approaches it. And he tells some really fascinating stories about how he's brought kind of some Eastern cultures into the way he's running his own business and how he's helping other organizations to do the same thing. So I really encourage you to sit back and listen to the very interesting and very fascinating Mark Monchek. Mark, thank you so much indeed for joining us from New York on the Winning Teams podcast. It's a great honor to have you here.
My great pleasure, John. Thank you for inviting me.
Not at all. It's great because I know that you're the founder and Chief Opportunity Officer, as you referred yourself to, for the Opportunity Lab, but you're also the author of the book, which The Culture of Opportunity, How to Grow Your Business in an Age of Opportunity, which I have to say I am thoroughly enjoying and getting a lot of value from. But maybe before we kind of dig into it, maybe just give people a little bit of a flavor of your background so they've got context for the message that you're sharing.
Yeah, John, I was brought up at the intersection of business, psychology, and art. So my parents were the only people in our family that did not work in the family business. So my mother's father and her family escaped the Holocaust in 1938, came to America, and my grandfather reestablished his fine artist brush business, which he sold in 1968 to Binney and Smith. And I was always fascinated with how he did it. How did he survive the Holocaust and restart his business on Bleecker Street in 1938? My uncles started a toy business right after World War II when the baby boom started, and they were selling toys to all kinds of retail stores, including Macy's and Mays and Gimbel's back then. My father was a psychiatrist. My mother was an artist. So I grew up fascinated with the psychology and art of entrepreneurship, and have been really studying that and working in that area for several decades.
Fascinating background. I didn't know that. That's an absolutely extraordinary background to have. I mean, just the whole thing becoming from the Holocaust right through the story, and then the choice of careers that your parents took were really quite extraordinary from the families that they came from.
Yeah, you know, John, my father was the only one of 7 to go to college.
Right.
And he grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn. He was born in 1909, just at the very beginning of the 20th century. And they lived in an apartment which was about 500 square feet with 9 people in it. So talk about the intensity, talk about winning teams. You're a family that lives in 500 square feet. You have to become a team. And you have to learn teamwork and balance the individual needs with the greater good of the family. So I've learned a lot about teams from families and family businesses.
Wow, that's amazing. In the book, which, as I said, the Culture of Opportunity, which I really love, I must say I really do. I just find a really interesting book to read. You do refer to what you call the success DNA. And I'm wondering if you could maybe just, because I found that the way you talked about that in the book and how you describe it, it was just so interesting. Can you describe, tell the audience exactly what that is, and how do you actually identify and know exactly what your own success DNA is?
Great question, John. So, I discovered the concept of success DNA by looking at the patterns of success and failure in the companies that I've worked with over the years and in my own personal life, right? So in America, we study failure. If you look at the newspaper or news podcasts, right, every day you see failure after failure after failure, and then there's a kind of post-mortem of why did we fail? And I thought, why don't we study success? Because it's really success that we want to repeat, not failure. So back in 2002, I discovered appreciative inquiry, which comes out of in Ohio, University in Ohio, John Cooperrider. And he started studying success inside organizations and asking people, what happens when greatness happens in your organization? What are the conditions that exist for success? And then there was a pattern that would emerge, right? And I thought that was fascinating. So I really, really enjoyed, and it was Case Western Reserve, actually was the name of the university. So I enjoyed that. But then I realized it's not just what happens in the organization, John, it's actually what happens outside in the world. So I started with the idea of appreciative inquiry, and then I looked at the pattern between success inside a company and the market dynamics or the environment outside the company, which I would call organizational karma, right? Meaning, what is a pattern of success? So the way we do it is we look at the 5 most successful endeavors your team has had, you as an individual, your company over the last several years, and what are the conditions that existed inside your organization and then out in the larger world. And what we found that there was this pattern that when companies succeeded, there was an alignment between the inside culture and the dynamics that go on inside and the outside world. So, for example, in my life, I have had great successes when I have been focused and passionate and immersed in something that I really cared about. And it usually was something very disruptive and chaotic that was happening out in the world, right? So in 9/11, as one example, I was brought down to half a mile from ground zero to work with a company that lost 62 people in the South Tower of the World Trade Center and help them get back 1 week after 9/11 into functioning so that they actually were profitable in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, and they donated $3 million to the Euro Brokers Relief Fund. That was one of my success DNA, examples. So as we've been studying them, we then look at, okay, what is the biggest failure that you've had in recent times? And everybody knows what that is. And so when you ask somebody, well, what happened when you failed? It's a big aha. When we fail, we go off of the pattern. We get greedy. We get opportunistic. We don't communicate. We don't use our resources. We try to do too much too soon. So it's the pattern of the elements inside the organization, the conditions outside the organization, and they match. And it'd be interesting. You see it over time. It happens much more than you realize. So that's what we do. We actually create a success profile and match it against the one big failure.
Okay. Let me just just a thought that's going through my mind as you're saying that is that when you're looking at that, you're looking at what's happened in the past. And the past behaviors, the past successes or the past failures, and in the market in the past, right? How does that work if you're looking into the future and you're saying, well, it's going to be a very different market and environment that we're going to be in? Is using what we've done in the past, is that valid for a future market that may be very different to the one we're currently in right now?
That is a great question and extremely relevant. So yeah, we realized that the success DNA, when I wrote my book in 2017, Culture of Opportunity, How to Grow Your Business in an Age of Disruption, that disruption created such radical change that you couldn't just use the past to predict the future. So we've been updating the success DNA model to add what we call allowing the emerging future to kind of be mixed in with your success DNA. So your success DNA certainly matters, because it does understand there's something very, very deep in how an organization operates, right?
Mhm.
However, you're right that there is a future that could be very different than the past. So we've got a new process that we've added on called Allowing the Emerging Future, where we actually sense what's happening outside in the world and inside, and we find a way to kind of undownload the things that are in our ego to be able to say, okay, if we took our egos aside and the past aside, what is actually truly happening now? So it's a way to update and make Success DNA current.
Okay. And you talk about, and you talk about opportunity, which I mean it's clearly is in the title of the book. And but we all talk kind of rather glibly about, oh, there are opportunities here, there are opportunities there, there are opportunities in the marketplace. But you talk about becoming an expert in opportunity. And I'm just wondering how does one become an expert in opportunity?
Well, John, the first thing is mindset. So, you've heard of the idea of the growth mindset and the fixed mindset.
Hmm.
So, and we all have a certain aspect of both, right? Nobody is totally open and
No.
nobody is totally fixed. So becoming an expert in opportunity is constantly challenging our beliefs and seeing if we are limiting ourselves, if we are putting ourselves based on what happened in the past or based on something that is not supporting us right now. So it's an ongoing practice of opening up to growth. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, the things that keep us in a fixed mindset are, one, thinking that we're not enough and feeling separate from our colleagues, our teammates, our clients, the world out there. So when you feel not enough and you're self-critical and you're actually putting yourself down, that creates a sense of separation. Well, I'm different than my colleagues, or I'm not as good as my customers, or I'm this or that or whatever. So challenging those beliefs that don't support the unique greatness matched with the team's need for the greater good. And so in the book, you also probably read about, the importance of a leader seeing the greater good. And in your podcast and Winning Teams, in today's world, right, you have to balance the needs of the individual team member with the needs of the team itself. And so leaders today have to be very cognizant about, I have team members that are different races, different cultures, different languages, different generations, different genders. And those people, we need to speak their language and understand their individual needs. And we also have to make sure that the greater good is considered as well. So that balance is very, very critically, important.
But it's very difficult to create a culture of opportunity, isn't it? Because really, what you're looking to do there is to develop that culture of opportunity, but also to develop and shifting the mindset of people, particularly in large organizations, very often where it's the kind of the people might say, okay, well, it's very difficult to be an entrepreneur in a very large corporate, which I don't necessarily agree with. And I think that many people are very successful being entrepreneurial. But how do you foster and develop that culture of opportunity within the organization?
Well, first of all, to your point, John, it is difficult. It absolutely is difficult. And we have to know and own that it's difficult. Look, most companies have a shelf life of 2 or 3 years. Right. So you have companies that exist for 100 years, but they're very rare. The companies that were at the top of their market in 2008, right? You had AIG, you had Bear Stearns, you had Lehman Brothers, you had Nokia, which was the largest maker of handsets in the world. Now they're a much smaller company, doing digital mapping. You had Blockbuster. So a culture of opportunity is very difficult, and the ability to do it and the work that goes into it is absolutely challenging. But it's really about the owners and leaders constantly wanting to be better people, more open, more empathetic, a growth mindset, and really balancing the individual needs of their employees and their customers with the greater good of the teams, the company, and the world out there. So it's absolutely a challenge, but it starts with the leaders and the owners believing that their ability to be better people is key to their companies being better companies.
Yeah. You quoted Lao Tzu, which I really loved. I loved that quote, and I hadn't. I came across it. I came across it. I haven't come across it until I was reading your book, and it's a great quote. Is that when I let go of what I am, I become who I might be. Why was that so important to include in the book?
Well, that who I think I am is my ego.
Mm.
And that is based on a very, very finite set of understandings of who I am. And when I let go of who I am, I see who else is out there, right? So if my ego thinks, well, I'm really important, I'm really special, I will not see the unique greatness and specialness of other people, right? Which is one of my jobs as a team leader and as a organizational leader. So it's a constant letting go of ego and serving the greater good rather than serving your own ego, which is not easy to do because the ego needs to be fed. It's very greedy. It always wants to be feeling good about yourself.
But it is a challenge, isn't it, in organizations to get, I mean, it's a challenge for individuals, let alone organizations, but it is a massive, because people's identity get and in going back into the corporate world, people's identity get wrapped up in their title and role and all of that sort of stuff, where you then start to lose perspective about what's actually really important.
Yeah, absolutely difficult. And you had mentioned at the beginning of the show, I know you're going to maybe ask me this at the end, but it seems like it's very relevant right now. What are my daily practices? Because those daily practices, or sadhanas, what they call it in the Hindu culture, in the Hindu spiritual tradition, really take a lot of time, but they mean so much, and they make me more present to that, who I'm emerging to be. So meditation twice a day. I do a lot of journaling, sometimes with a non-dominant hand. I don't know if you've ever done this, John, but if you're
No.
right-handed and you actually are saying, what am I feeling right now with my non-dominant hand? You actually go into a child's mind. So because your non-dominant hand doesn't have the competency to write, it actually brings out in a very raw and vulnerable way what you're actually feeling. So non-dominant hand journaling, and you can't journal for 10 minutes. You're going to journal for like a minute because it's very uncomfortable, but you get the raw stuff of what's really, in there. I do yoga, I do swimming probably 5 times a week, and then kind of connecting with my team, on a deeper level. So we have kind of a heart opening meditation that we do at the beginning of team meetings. We have an emotional kind of spiritual check-in. So we start from the heart and create a safe space for people to say whatever they need to say and integrate their personal lives into their work lives, which is a big change today. I think in the days before COVID, it's like, we don't really care about your personal life. Just show up to work and do your job. Well, now your personal life is on Zoom, your dog, your children, your dirty closet, what have you. And companies that are really succeeding today have to understand, like, we got to make an integration between what people need in their personal lives with what they need in their work lives.
That's fascinating. That could be the topic of another interview for this podcast on its own. What you're doing there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I come back to the book for a moment, because I thought that when you talked about the challenge of kind of a year of opportunity, right? I thought that was a great. I hadn't really come across that or thought about the way you kind of positioned that. I thought that was extremely clever, but I also could see how helpful that would be to organizations. So maybe explain what that is and how you go about doing it and how you actually manage that over a period, because I think that's a really fantastic just little tool that you have.
Well, in that year of opportunity, given that Lao Tzu quote, right, we want to, as the opportunity team that does this, let go of who we think we are to really imagine what we could be, what the team could be. So we put aside all limitations. So it's totally blue sky, open, no limitations. And people come up with 25 opportunities that they want in their year of opportunity. Well, you can't do 25. Maybe you could do 5. Maybe you can't even do 3, right? So the challenge is, all right, we've got all these incredible opportunities. Which ones are right for us? So it's the opportunity filter, John, that actually makes this thing work into an opportunity plan, right? So it's the visioning of what could be. And now, all right, so we've got 25. How do we filter them? So we start with number one, will they impact the business results that you have determined is how you're going to measure success in the time you need it, right? So if the opportunity is we are going to start to sell our products in another country, okay, great opportunity, but will it impact the business results we've set out for this year? If yes, then that goes down one level to the filter. Is it consistent with our success DNA and our emerging future? That is our update of our success DNA, meaning does it give us a relatively good chance we could succeed at it? Do we have the resources in and outside of our organization using the resource mapping process, which I shared in the book as well? And then lastly, is our team on board? So there's 4 filters to take your year of opportunity down into the 3 or so that actually are going to matter now, then the ones that we can do later this year or next year, and the ones we actually shouldn't be doing at all.
Right. Okay. And am I right in saying that when you're putting together the team of people that are going to be engaged in that, you don't just have the people that are within the business, you actually find other people to join? Did I get that right? That you find other people that, yeah.
That is key, because one of the things, John, that destroyed some of these companies that we mentioned, these iconic companies, is they had a very insular mindset. They did not have anybody in the organization challenging the status quo. So in the opportunity team, you have people from different levels of the organization. The CEO has one vote or one voice like anybody else. So a CEO or an owner cannot just dominate this cultural opportunity process, because if they did that, it would actually be counterproductive to co-creation of this culture. So we want to have people from outside who have 3 qualities. 1, they deeply care about the organization. They want the best for it. 2, they have a complementary skill or experiences that add something to what's existing there. And 3, they're willing to respectfully challenge the status quo and bring new ideas that the team would not have on their own.
I just think that's really clever. I think it's very focused, and I think it actually gives a great filtration system to actually decide what are the things that's going to really have an impact. The other one that I was curious to maybe for you to share with the audience are what you refer to as the principles of conscious leaders.
Yeah, so I was talking a moment ago about my practices, my kind of daily practices. One of them I call the quiet mind of the conscious leader. And in this world today, when we check our email, 300 times a day, we check our phone 1,500 times a week, right? Our average attention span on a website is 15 seconds. And our average attention span overall is less than a goldfish's, which is 9 seconds. I think our attention span is 8.5 seconds now. So, attention is a very rare, commodity. So how do you actually stay focused? You have to quiet your mind. And meditation, whatever form you do, I've done very different forms. It's really about the consistency of it, right? And what research shows, John, is that you could be thinking for 20 minutes in your meditation, your brain still quiets down and gets the benefits, even if you're not a monk or a guru, right? Because it's really blocking out the external stimulations. No email, no text messages, no music, nothing. Put eye shades on, close your eyes. The brain quiets down. When the brain quiets down, that's when insight and innovation come to the surface.
I think that is incredibly powerful. Mark, this has been great. I love what you're doing. I think that there's so much that you've got to offer in terms of the approach, the approach that you're taking. I know you already mentioned some of the things that you do as daily rituals. You might just kind of talk about those again briefly, just so that people really capture it.
Yeah, so it's the quieting the mind with meditation. I go swimming. I'm lucky, John. I have a pool in my building. So to me, swimming is like a water meditation.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the pool, I mean, there are people who actually have headphones on when they're swimming, but I don't want to have any stimulation other than the water, right? So I feel myself in the water, and it feels like I'm back in the womb. right? And there's something about being in that room that makes you feel safe. And things happen when you're in that quiet space. So meditation, swimming, I need to move my body a lot. We have bodies that were actually made to move a lot. And whether it's being in the gym or in the swimming pool or walking or running or whatever actually makes you happy, I think is really important to move that body. And then also to connect to people at a deeper level. I mentioned when in our opening of our team meetings, each person is around Robin, gets a chance to open the meeting with something that they are passionate about. It could be an exercise, a meditation, a visualization, something that they've seen in a movie, what have you. So that heart connection in a safe space is also a daily practice that's so important in a day that we're not connecting to people because of all these distractions.
Yeah, I'm really interested to say that about meditation, because I do meditate every day. I'll always describe myself as a bad meditator, right? In the sense of that I cannot keep my mind still. But I've also learned from people that say that's not the point. But I do it every day,
Yes.
because to me, the benefit that I get from it, and I mentioned what you're saying about you shutting down, is that in the moment when I start getting stressed or bothered or something like that, it's the meditation has exercised a muscle that I can just come back and center myself.
Yeah, and John, people say, well, I can't get to the habit. It's just not gotten to be a habit. So I say, well, do you brush your teeth every day? Oh yeah. Why do you brush your teeth every day? Does somebody tell you? No, my mouth feels dirty. I couldn't even think to go out. My mouth goes dirty. I'm probably smells. I say, when you meditate regularly, even if you just do it for a week, just 1 week, your mind will feel dirty. Your mind will feel cluttered and just sucky when you're not meditating. So once you actually do it enough, you go like, I just need my mind to be clean and quiet.
Exactly. Yeah. It just gives you that space. Second question's a book other than your own and that has had an impact upon you. What's the book and what was the impact?
Well, you mentioned Lao Tzu, so I will mention the Tao Te Ching, which is the Book of Changes, which is where I believe that quote came from. And that book just helps me really focus on the interconnectedness of all life with people and nature, and the importance of moving the ego out of the way to see what's actually really present at the moment. And I've read that book, I don't know, hundreds of times. It's a short book, but it's so deep and meaningful and beautifully written.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. They're very different, but I kind of categorize that book and Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl's book. I mean, it's different.
Oh yeah.
But I kind of they're my two that I kind of go back and I try and read quite regularly. And the fascinating thing I always find about both of those books, that every time, and I've read both of them loads of times, but every time I read them, I get something different from them.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's the power in those two books are quite phenomenal. Mark, this has been fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed this. And I love your book, but I love the approach that you're taking with it. I love your messaging in there. Where can people get in touch with you? We'll put all the show notes, all the information in the show notes. But if they're listening right now, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so thanks, Sean. So oplab.com is our website. On our website, we have many of our my podcast appearances. We've got a lot of free content. You can sign up for our newsletter. And every month we host an opportunity community gathering of entrepreneurs and leaders from around the world to talk about how to actually grow a business that cares about people, planet, and purpose in an age of radical disruption. So it's next Thursday. Actually, it's next Thursday from 4 to 5 Eastern. You can sign up on our website. It's free. You get a reminder, and we'd love to have some of your audience come and join us then.
Well, Mark, thank you so much. All of that, and that is fascinating. Thank you again. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to continuing. Let's come back and do this again.
Thank you, John, for the work you do.